So your baby's almost 6 months old and everyone seems to have an opinion about what comes next. Your mother-in-law thinks you should give them rice cereal. Your sister swears by purees, and you've gone down a rabbit hole at like 1 a.m. in the morning Googling baby-led weaning, and now you're even more confused than when you started. Here's the thing, starting solids doesn't have to be complicated, and it definitely doesn't have to be stressful. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 easy, nourishing foods you can offer baby in the first 2 weeks of baby-led weaning, and I'm going to show you something a lot of people skip that I think is genuinely one of the best things you can offer alongside food. So stick around for that. Hi guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Nat, and this channel is all about nourishing your family with real whole food, the kind of food your grandparents grew up on. Now, before we get into the foods, I just want to say I know how overwhelming those first few weeks of baby-led weaning can feel. You want to get it right, you want your baby to be happy, and I get it because I've been there too. I've structured this video so you've got a really clear, practical starting point. I'm also including a section on gagging because almost every mum that I talk to is terrified of it. And I want to reassure you that it's actually a really important part of your baby learning to eat, but more on that soon. First, before we get into the foods, I want to cover a few things that I would suggest leaving out of your baby's diet in the early months, because I think knowing what not to do is just as useful as knowing what to do. Firstly, it's grains like wheat and rice. And I know rice cereal is practically the first default food for a lot of families, and I get it because that's what everyone seems to be told. But those days are behind us. And the reality is that your baby doesn't produce enough enzymes needed to break down those grains in the first 12 months of being alive. Their digestive systems just aren't ready for them yet. You know, other things like quinoa and buckwheat are both fine. They're so much easier for them to digest, but wheat and rice are worth holding off on until they get closer to their first birthday. The second one is fruit juice, even like fresh juice you've squeezed at home. Juicing removes all the fiber from the fruit and absolutely concentrates the sugars, and will give your baby a massive sugar hit without any real nutritional benefit. At this stage, we're going to stick with whole soft fruit or fruit that's been cooked down and softened. That's always the way to go. The third one is anything low fat yogurt, cheese, anything light really. Babies and toddlers need fat. Fat is crucial for brain development, for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins as well, like A, D, E, and K. We do not want reduced fat for babies, full fat always. And fourth is those refined oils like vegetable oils, canola, sunflower, all those really highly processed inflammatory oils. They're not something we want to be cooking our baby's food with. Instead, let's reach for whole food fats. Ghee, butter, tallow, coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil. These are all nourishing kinds of fats, and baby's body will actually know what to do with it. And here's something I want you to keep in mind right from the start. The more variety of flavors and textures you expose your baby to now, the more adventurous an eater they're likely to become. Their taste preferences are forming right now. And in these early weeks, you don't want to be afraid of introducing a good variety early on, even if it feels like a lot. Okay, now we're ready. Let's get into the foods. So day one, and we're starting with one of my absolutely favorite foods, the avocado. It's nice and soft, and that's really an important thing because we're not going to be offering baby anything crunchy or crispy. They're like all choking hazards. So avocado is naturally beautifully soft. You just want to slice it into fingers, roughly the size of your pinky finger. That's really the benchmark for baby-led weaning, is pinky-sized food strips. That shape makes it really easy for baby to pick up and to feed themselves. Avocado is full of beautiful, healthy fats, and that's a good thing for babies. They're critical for your baby's rapidly developing brain. Day 2, we're diving into the veggies. So steamed or roasted zucchini. I love this one as an early food because it's a very low reactive vegetable and it's really gentle on their developing digestive system. So for zucchini, cut it into nice finger shapes and steam it until soft. You can even roast it gently in the oven if you want. You don't want it mushy enough that it's going to, squish between their fingers when they pick it up. So once it's cooled down, pop it in a bowl and they're ready to explore. Zucchini is nice and mild in flavour, which makes it a great introduction veggie. It's also got a high water content, so nice and hydrating, and has a little bit of B vitamins and folate in there too. Day 3, we're moving on to sweet potato. Now, I'm sure your baby will love this one. Again, we're going to cut it into finger-sized pieces, toss it with a little ghee or tallow or coconut oil, and then here's where we're going to introduce a bit more flavor. So some mild herb or spice, so something like a little bit of cinnamon or fennel or rosemary. You're building Bub's flavor profile, and that's a good thing. You're just going to cook it at about 180 for 20 minutes. You don't want them getting crispy, so make sure you keep an eye on them. Sweet potato is going to give them fiber and fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, which is why pairing them with good fat is non-negotiable. Okay, day 4, and we're introducing meat. A lot of people think meat, this early on. Well, yes, and here's why I think it is so important. Iron is one of the most critical nutrients for babies at this age, and the iron found in meat, heme iron, is the most easily absorbed form of iron for your baby. Your baby's iron stores from birth start to deplete around this age of 6 months, so it's exactly why we need to start introducing it to their diet. So the timing here really matters. I'm choosing lamb today because it's another wonderfully low reactive food. It's also one of the richest sources of iron and zinc for your baby. The cuts I go for a lamb shoulder or a slow roasted lamb. You can pop it in a slow cooker or in the oven on low and just cook it all day long until it's nice and soft. My rule of thumb for all meat in baby-led weaning is if you can shred it between your finger and thumb, it's safe for your baby to eat with just their gums. And that's how you're going to test it always. You can pour a little bit of that meat juice over the top. It's going to add moisture and flavor, and your baby will, suck and gnaw on those soft strips of meat. It's more than truly eating them at first, but that's completely fine. They're being exposed, they're tasting, they're exploring, and it all counts. Day 5, and we're going to finish with beautiful roasted pumpkin, another low reactive food. It's great, it's gentle, it's nourishing, and honestly, most babies are completely smitten with pumpkin. Cut it into strips. Leaving the skin on for roasting is totally fine. You're going to drizzle it with a little fat and then spices. Cinnamon is a beautiful pair with pumpkin here. Roasted at 200 until it's soft and just starting to caramelize at the edges. Peel the skin off before you serve it and obviously make sure it's cooled down. Pumpkin is rich in beta carotene, the same as sweet potato. The body converts that to vitamin A. It's also a good source of potassium and vitamin C. And that natural sweetness makes it really easy for babies to take to. Now, a quick tip is we don't want our veggies to overcook. You don't want them to be too soft that they're just going to smush when your baby tries to pick them up. So when they pop out of the oven or are finished steaming, I like to pop them straight into a glass dish and into the freezer. That way they'll make sure it doesn't continue to overcook and go really soggy. And another tip is why not roast or batch cook all of your veggie sticks together? You're going to save a lot of time and effort if you do. So that's your first week done. 5 beautiful, simple, low reactive foods. Now give yourself a pat on the back. So I promised you I would let you in on my little secret. So alongside introducing your baby to solid foods, I want to talk about bone broth. And it might sound a little old-fashioned, like something, your grandma used to make, but honestly, she was onto something. I'm sure you know how it's made. You've got to slowly simmer chicken, beef, or lamb bones for a really long time. And what you end up with is a deeply nourishing liquid that's rich in collagen, gelatin, minerals, even calcium, magnesium. It's also rich in glycine, which is an amino acid that's really going to support your baby's gut lining integrity and their overall gut health. And why do I believe it's brilliant for babies starting solids? Well, introducing food for the first time does put a demand on your baby's digestive system. Bone broth, with its gut supportive nutrients, is a really gentle way to help their gut adapt. And it's a wonderful flavor carrier too. Pouring it over meat makes it easier to swallow. And how else can you serve it? You can offer a small amount in a little open cup. Babies can start learning to drink from a cup at this age, or you can offer it in spoonfuls. I think I remember my daughter loved to suck it out of a little syringe as well. I prefer homemade broth, as store-bought versions usually have added salt, and babies do not need any salt in their diet at this age. Their kidneys are just not ready for it. I know everyone doesn't have time to make their own bone broth, and that's okay. But if you want to try starting, it really is quite easy. I'll link a recipe below for you. Okay, to start week 2, and we're starting with fruit. Steamed pear. It's one of my favorite early fruits because it's another low reactive one, and when it's cooked it goes incredibly nice and soft and easy for babies to manage. You want to peel it, core it, cut it into slices, then steam it or poach it until it's tender enough. It has a lovely mild sweetness and it's really well tolerated by most babies. It's also been traditionally used to support gentle digestion, which is a bonus at this stage. You can also add a nice little pinch of cinnamon on top once it's finished cooking, just no honey or sugar. Day 7, and it's time for some more greens. I love broccoli, or you can also use cauliflower for baby-led weaning. It's so good because once you cut them up, they come with their own little handle, the stem, so it's very easy for Bub to pick it up and just gnaw on. Cut the florets with as much stem as you can, roast them or steam them until nice and soft. And that's right, don't forget to add a nice little drizzle of fats on top and some herbs and spice if you like. Okay, day 8, it's time for some more meat, and this time it's going to be beef. Beef is one of my faves for baby-led weaning as well because it's iron rich. So if lamb was your baby's first meat last week, beef is a wonderful follow-on. And if you'd like to try chicken this week, that works just as good too. The best cuts for baby-led weaning would be a chuck roast or a brisket. It's got to be slow cooked until it's nice and falling apart again. Pressure cooker's good here, or the slow cooker. Cook it until it's falling apart and you can smush it between your fingers. That's your sign it's ready. And the meat juices, don't throw them away. Make sure you serve it on top. It keeps the meat nice and moist, and your baby will love slurping it up. So on day 9, we're going to introduce our first allergenic food, egg. And I want to spend a little bit of time here because how you introduce allergens really does matter. And here's what I recommend when you introduce egg for the first time, or an allergen. You want to offer it 3 days in a row. And during those 3 days, do not offer any other new foods. Just egg alongside some of the familiar veggies that your baby already knows. The reason for this is simple. If your baby has a reaction, you want to know exactly what caused it, and keeping things consistent takes out the guesswork. And you want to keep an eye on your baby. So things to look for. Skin changes is often a first sign, like a rash, hives, or eczema flaring up. You also watch for any changes in their stools or signs with digestive discomfort, like unusual fussiness after eating, bloating, or changes in their nappies. and general irritability that seems out of character for your baby. One thing I always recommend is keeping a food diary, even just a few notes on your phone, what you fed your baby when and how they seemed afterwards. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Just having that record is useful, especially if you do notice something and you need to go and talk to your GP or health professional. Now for the egg itself. The egg white is where the allergenic protein lives. Egg yolk is where all the iron and nutrition is. So we want baby to have both. I just like to whisk up the egg, give it a fry in some of that good fat, cut it into little strips once it's cooked and cooled down, and offer it to your babies. So remember, really observing your baby over those 3 days is good practice. And that food diary is very useful as you keep introducing new foods, especially the allergenic ones. And for day 10, we're offering one of the most underrated vegetables, parsnip. It doesn't get nearly enough love, and I think it's a brilliant baby-led weaning food. If you can't source it, carrot is fine too here. So just peel it up, cut it into fingers, toss it in some of, ghee or coconut oil, and roast it again until it's nice and just starting to golden. The natural sugars in parsnip caramelize nicely. It has a nice, slightly sweet, nutty flavor, and babies tend to really enjoy it. And it's another low-reactive food. Parsnips are a good source of folate, vitamin C, and fiber, which are all really valuable. Okay, I want to share one more thing before we get on to gagging, because I think it's one of the most overlooked additions you can make once your baby is, a couple of weeks into starting solids, and that is sauerkraut. I know sauerkraut doesn't exactly seem like a baby food, but just a tiny amount is all we're talking about. Like a teaspoon or even just a teaspoon of juice is what they can start out with. Just offer it alongside what your baby's eating, and it can be a really lovely way to start supporting your baby's gut microbiome from early on. So I'm sure you know sauerkraut's a fermented cabbage, and the fermentation process creates live beneficial bacteria that support a healthy, diverse gut microbiome. And we know how foundational that is for digestion, immunity, and so much more. The other reason I love introducing it now is taste familiarization. So it's nice and tangy, and it's different, and it's probably nothing like your baby's ever tasted before, and that's a good thing. The more varied flavors we introduce early, like bitter, tangy, savory, and sweet, the less likely your baby is to become a picky eater down the track. I love to make my own sauerkraut, but if you don't have time, there's some beautiful ones available at health food shops and the supermarket. Just make sure it's plain, unpasteurized, with no added vinegar, preservatives, and it's usually found in the fridge section. It's the live cultures in the unpasteurized sauerkraut that give your baby's gut all that benefit. Start small and see how they respond, and enjoy watching their face the first time they taste it. It's usually quite funny. Okay, before we wrap it up, let's talk about something that I know causes a lot of anxiety for first-time baby-led weaning parents, and that's gagging. If you're worried about gagging, you're completely normal. Almost every mum I've spoken to says it's the thing that frightens them the most when starting solids. But here's what I want you to understand. Gagging is not choking, and the two are completely different things. And once you understand the difference, it's going to change everything. So gagging is a protective reflex. Your baby's born with an extremely sensitive gag reflex. And as they start exploring food, their mouth and tongue are learning how to manage different textures and sizes of foods. And when food reaches that trigger zone near the back of their tongue, they gag. And it looks really dramatic, like their eyes water, they go red, they start making horrible retching sounds, and every instinct in your body, wants to dive in. But here's the thing, the gag reflex is doing its job. It's moving the food back to a safe position towards the front of the mouth so your baby can try again. and it is like your baby's built-in safety mechanism. Over the first weeks and months of eating, their gag reflex will gradually migrate further back in their mouth as they get more confident. That's how it's meant to work. The gagging actually decreases the more that they practice. Now, choking is different. Choking is silent. There's no dramatic retching or noise. If your baby's choking, the airway is blocked and they can't make a sound. That is when you need to act. And that's why it's so important to know infant first aid. I will link some resources in the description below. My advice is just sit close, stay calm, and let them work through the gag. Don't hover over them all panicky. Babies pick up on our anxiety and it can make mealtime stressful for them too. Just trust the process. And if you want to feel extra confident, I definitely recommend doing that infant first aid course before you start solids. It's one of the best things that you can do, not because anything will go wrong, but because knowing what to do means you can, just relax and enjoy watching your baby learn to eat, which is honestly one of the most joyful things you'll ever witness. I remember taking countless videos of watching my babies eat for the first time because I never want to forget that experience. All right, so there you have it, 10 easy, nourishing first foods across your first 2 weeks of baby-led weaning. Plus, bone broth as a beautiful companion to solid foods, sauerkraut is a lovely next step for the gut health, and everything you need to know to feel confident about gagging. You do not need to be a nutritionist to feed your baby well. You just need a little bit of information, a relaxed mealtime, and the confidence to let your baby explore. You've absolutely got this. If this was helpful, I'd love for you to hit subscribe. I share new videos every week all about nourishing your family with whole foods. And please drop me a comment below. I'd love to know where you are at in your baby-led weaning journey. Now, don't forget, I've linked a simple bone broth recipe, some infant first aid courses, and a few baby-led weaning products that I recommend in the description below. And if you want to go deeper, I'll pop a related video on screen for you now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.